feature presentation.
Welcome back to another untitled streaming but sort of movie review because it's playing in cinemas in both New York and Toronto and maybe other places, but I only know New York and Toronto. But I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, and alongside me he's allergic to tomatoes, but he's one half of the Cherry Tomato Boys, Eric Marchin.
Just getting back from Nate's Lizard Lounge, got a beverage and
Nice,
good to go.
I went with iced coffee, no cherry tomatoes, but I do have an Uncrustable on standby. It's currently defrosting. We're doing a lot of recording today, everyone. This is the mid-record snack with the iced coffee and the Uncrustable and the grape soda from Eric. Reminds me of when you got grape soda on the Grape Crush when we were on the bus ride from hell back from New York.
Oh, that's when you know like things are getting wild.
When Eric breaks out the grape soda. So today we will be reviewing the first 3 episodes of the Nathan Fielder and Benny Safdie series, The Curse, which is now streaming on Paramount Plus, both in the US and Canada. It's a Showtime and A24 co-production, which is on Paramount Plus. So a little
it's
confusing.
Very confusing. It should be on HGTV. Let's be real.
Yeah, I'm not against that either. And then what I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, it is playing theatrically in a couple of locations, which was probably by the request of, I'm assuming, Benny Safdie, but probably Nathan Fielder as well. But it is playing in New York at the Lincoln Center because it did premiere at the New York Film Festival. These same 3 episodes that we saw premiered at the New York Film Festival. And then it's playing week to week theatrically at the Lincoln Center. So TIFF here in Toronto is doing the same thing where they premiered the first 3 episodes last week, where Eric and I went. Did I realize each episode was an hour long and that we'd be there for 3 hours? I did not.
Nope,
but
not at all.
That's okay. And then they'll be doing weekly showings on Fridays of the subsequent episodes. So they did the first 3, but then when episode 4 starts, they'll be doing it weekly at TIFF and in New York. Could be other places. Let us know if there are other places that are doing this. And then until the series ends. So we'll be talking about the first 3 episodes. The first episode is available for everyone to stream right now on Paramount Plus Canada, or if there are tickets left, go see it at the Lightbox. I don't know if we'll be going every week. I think that's too much of a commitment for me. I might try to do the finale with Eric because I think that would be fun to just bookend this series with the premiere episodes and the finale. So we'll get into it. We won't spoil specific details and plot points from episodes 2 and 3 because no one has seen those yet other than the people who attended these screenings, but everyone has seen episode 1, so we can kind of talk about that as a whole, or if you haven't, we'll try to dance around that stuff as well, since we have to dance around everything. But there will be specific things that we point out, so if you don't want to know anything, stop now, go watch the first episode, maybe come back after episode 3 or something like that, or come back and just see our spoiler-free thoughts on everything. So first episode directed by Nathan Fielder. Then we have the Zellner brothers directing episodes 2 and 3. Eric, I don't even know where to start with this. Or maybe we should give people like a little bit of a log line of what the hell this show is if they don't know. It is a Safdie Fielder kind of whatever you think that would be if you've seen things. If you've seen a Safdie brothers movie or if you've seen a Nathan Fielder TV show, just imagine the love child of those 2 things, and it is exactly what you would expect it to be. So
it's cringe comedy at its finest. It's what it really comes down to. And like it's hard not to say this or to sum it up this way, at least with the first episode, but even just like in terms of like what I have seen and laughed at in 2023, but the Cherry Tomato Boys exposes the funniest sight gag of 2023, and I cannot stop laughing every time I think about it. incredible. But it also, like you mentioned, it's that perfect storm of self-deprecation, anxiety, stress, uh, fear of everything and everyone around you, and sometimes the absurdity just kind of slowly but surely seeping in. It's on a weird, disjointed kind of roller coaster ride at times where, it goes from one direction to another. Is it magical realism that's coming into play, or is there an actual force? Are these people that we're watching who, are very complicated but flawed individuals taking responsibility for their own mistakes or blaming something that they feel is uh, apt because it's out of their control? And so when you're focusing a story, which is kind of ingenious, to take the HGTV kind of craze of like the Property Brothers and other shows like that, the home reno, flipping houses kind of show, and then
It goes
turn
back
it
to
on
Extreme
its
Home Makeover. Remember that from like 10 years
yeah.
ago or 15 years ago.
So when you flip those kind of shows on its head and you have this young newlywed couple played by Emma Stone and Nathan Fielder working on a pilot for HGTV with Benny Safdie as the producer, who kind of looks a little almost like Gene Simmons, like in that way where like he has like the hair and like
goatee,
kind of grew up in the metal era, heavy metal power ballad era of music, working on this show. And they're introducing eco-friendly housing in New Mexico, go horribly wrong in each episode in terms of dealing with gentrification, but also imposter syndrome, anxiety, plagiarism, like
insecurity is a big thing, right? Like,
yeah, even things about appropriation and sort of bringing
white
and
feminism.
involving the community, like the white feminism. Oh my god, it's incredible. It's this mix of everything that you try to avoid in your own life, and you're getting it all on the screen, or if you're watching it at home. And it is some of the funniest stuff you will see this year. But it also is so morose that when you get to the second and third episode, like the rehearsal, it becomes something else a little bit. Like it starts to really like disintegrate that first episode of like introducing the couple, introducing sort of the storyline, and giving you the sense that even before this curse that this young girl in a parking lot, this tiny curse is afflicted on them, it's like they were having problems before. And you can see that even in the interview that they give, especially Nathan Fielder, who can't let things go. And so when you're watching this, you can't help but feel both self-loathing and then also laughing at it, because there are things where it's like Nathan Fielder, I think, is his own worst critic, and you see that throughout the entire.
He inserts it in every show he's ever done. Is just okay. I'm just
quite literally he inserts it in this, in some of the most absurd ways possible. But Emma Stone's incredible on this show, and like between this and Poor Things, she's doing some amazing work in terms of going against any like conventional, agent or studio choices and finding the most kind of polarizing, divisive, absurd material you can get at, and then just, playing within something that people know and making it trendy, but at the same time warping that. It's perfect.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. Like what I was mentioning earlier of going, I think it's one of those shows where if it's your thing just based on the people involved, right? And like I said, it lives up to everything you could expect a Safdie Fielder collab would be, where Eric mentioned it, the cringe comedy from Fielder and him actually playing like a character is interesting, even though I was having this conversation with someone at a party yesterday where they're like, oh, it's so interesting seeing him like acting and playing like a character. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, he has been for like, I'm like, he's not, I get he's himself in those other shows, but I'm like, he's acting in all of those shows. He's a heightened
version of himself.
Yeah, he's playing it. And he's essentially doing the same thing again. It's not necessarily like he's doing something miraculously different. It's the same. It's just in something that is shown to you as this fictional narrative rather than this blend of what's real and what's not in his other shows, right? I think he's great. And then you get all that anxiety inducing kind of dark Safdie stuff from them too. And that blend of both of those things where it starts off very funny, very much like a Nathan Fielder style show where it's, and the Safdies do this as well, where some people seem like professional actors, some aren't. And that works really well with both of their kind of styles. Starts off very funny, but as Eric mentioned, like as the show kind of goes on and you see episode 2 and 3, a darkness creeps in. And I mentioned insecurity, and like that's the biggest thing that I see with these two leads and in the show, and what this curse is, and like this insecurity is almost their curse. And Eric already mentioned of being like, is it actually supernatural, or are they just their own worst enemies and they'll just pass blame on to everyone else and just use this as kind of a crutch to be like, well, I'm cursed, so that's why all this bad stuff's happening to me, or our marriage, or anything like that. And I think them being so insecure in themselves, being so insecure in their marriage, and how that just all kind of plays out and the different elements that happen, it gets darker and darker. And some of Benny Safdie's character's stuff gets pretty dark and sad. And that's the stuff that I didn't know what to expect from this, even though it's exactly what I expected, if that makes sense. I know that kind of like, I had no idea what to expect, but then when I got it, I go, of course, this is what this is, right? Like at times it's uncut gems where you're like clenching, you're sweating and your palms are sweating. You're like, oh, this is so uncomfortable I'm getting anxiety. And then it's so uncomfortable you're laughing, and that's the Nathan Fielder thing, right? So of course,
even with the Safdies, like there's a moment where Benny Safdie is crying, and you can't help but like
one guy in our theater just laughed their ass off at that, and no one else is laughing in the theater.
Yeah, and it's hard not to, because it's like it's the way that's shot, and it's the way that the camera's zooming in that moment, or when he's talking about his backstory, it's disturbing and tragic and horrible, but
the
also
way it's funny,
it's matter of fact, and you're watching this and you're seeing this couple at the center of it make the choices that they do, and they're trying to Emma Stone's character, her parents have worked in subsidized housing, and they've taken advantage of people that have economic restraints and have been having problems. And so she's trying to kind of disassociate herself with that, but still is falling in line with a lot of the things that her parents did. And so you see that aspect of it, or how she approaches any culture or people of color that aren't her own, like her own way of thinking, and sort of thinking, oh, I can help here, and I can do this, and I can be the white savior. And that aspect kind of plays out in
the virtue signaling as well, right? Like of her, like it makes for like really uncomfortable, but really like you see people like this all the time, and Emma Stone is so great at capturing that throughout this whole thing, of that a woman who so badly wants people to see that she's a good person, but really they're not. They're only really doing it for themselves, right? But needs everyone to see, like, and even though they think that they're doing it for the right reasons, it's like they don't even subconsciously realize that it's selfish what they're doing, and it is virtue signaling to the point of just like, look what I'm doing and look at everything that I do. I'm a good person. And that's that insecurity that I keep talking about that you see from that character. And she's such a good actress. And I mean, we saw Poor Things in this within a couple days span, and you go, God damn, Emma Stone is really great and can play like any character, and I believe it. Like there are certain actors where you just go, this, I don't buy you as this, but everything, at least lately, like even her comedic stuff to her more serious stuff, and she crushed it in La La Land, obviously, and like Poor Things is incredible. We'll talk about that very, very soon, but closer to its release. But she's so good at that. Yeah, virtue signaling, white feminist kind of like in this. It's like, oh, it's that uncomfortable being like, oh, everyone's been around someone like this too, or you've seen it, and you're just like, you're really just out for yourself. And then Nathan Fielder just on the other side of thing of being so pathetic and desperate at times too, where you're just he's so badly you know, wants his wife to like him or whoever, and like he, you know, throws people to the side, like the Benny Safdie character who just wants, you know, a friend at times too.
But
And is
even he's a
lonely.
little
Like,
sleazy in terms of
yeah,
how he is almost hitting on Emma Stone
yeah,
at one point when they're editing some of the sequences together in one scene, and how that plays out. But you even have moments where a lot of the interactions that Nathan Fielder's character Asher has at a casino that he formerly worked at, that he's trying to get
right there.
leverage for, that plays like Nathan For You almost, in a way,
Yeah.
right? Where like he's introducing almost like, you know, items like props into a scene and how they all play out. And I wonder how much of this is scripted and how much of he kind of, you know, finds things within the moment to kind of play on, or have the actors he's working against, whether they be professionals or somebody that's maybe more local. Because that's another thing where it feels like, okay, you have people like Corbin Burnson, who's playing Emma Stone's dad in this movie or series, and then you have Gary Farmer, who pops up in an episode. You know, these are established actors who have you know, careers and are known, but then you have people that feel very much like they're local within the community. And even the idea of exploiting, you know, the truth in terms of how you see things. That very first shot of episode 1, where, you know, they're manipulating the mother and her sympathies to the son that is trying to get work, right? And like, you know, putting water on the eyes. It's not dissimilar to what, you know, someone like Werner Herzog and Earl Morris have done in terms of, you know, creating sets or designs to make you kind of feel like you're emotionally connecting to people or seeing something that's not real. You know, there is a certain amount of exaggeration when it comes to documentary filmmaking, and so the truth is never completely you know, one-sided in that way. And so you're seeing it even within the context of this. And then what you were saying with Emma Stone, what I think is kind of amazing about her performance here and in Poor Things is how versatile she is. I know she is a great actor, but she's able to throw herself into these men that have created these worlds, you know, the Safdie, Benny and Nathan Fielder, but also in Yorgos Lanthimos, these worlds that they've created that are very specific and that could be easily just consuming and like be the thing that distracts you. But she is able to kind of find her way and navigate it, but then also use it to her advantage and creates her own character and dynamic within, you know, something that is so distinct, that I think like that is so hard to do when you have a filmmaker or creative that is known for something, and if you can't get on their wavelength, it it's easy to see through it. You know, it's easy to see that like it's not working. Like even as simple as like I mean, it's not the same thing in terms of like tone or anything like that, but we were talking about, you know, Brie Larson in the Marvels and with the MCU, you can tell that there is an insecurity there. There is an unsure quality of like, I don't know how to maybe play this character, and whether that's partly performance, partly writing, partly just kind of like being thrown into a world that's been, you know, already built. A lot of actors struggle to do that, and for people to give themselves over but still have their own creative voice come through the way that Emma Stone does, it's incredible to watch. And you kind of feel like at the same time, like they're not necessarily bad people in the sense of like they're monsters. They're just very vain, thin-skinned, as you said, insecure, I think is the best word, where, you know, what they're doing or what they're trying to do on paper is a good thing, but the reason behind it all, the motivations of these characters is far from, you know, pure in any way, or, you know, there's no virtue in what they're doing, you know. And if they were more honest with themselves, and even the first episode with the Cherry Tomato Boys, you know, if you're more honest with yourself of what you
is
are.
That in the first episode, or is it in
it's the first episode? Yeah,
great.
Because each episode is so long that it does feel like when you're watching, I think also when you're watching them like back to back to back the way that we did, it almost kind of feels like just together, one long movie. But when you're watching those scenes, you're realizing, okay, well, these characters need to take responsibility for their actions. And until they do so, they're always going to be fighting against something that's themselves. And then they're just going to find a reason to blame others for their own misfortune. And usually, like, that's basically what being irresponsible is, and not being a grown-up is. And
Yep.
you can see that these characters are so sheltered and so they don't know what they're doing, and it's very comical for us, but it's also like you can see where things are going horribly wrong. And it is so well shot, these 3 episodes, that when you're watching it, it still plays like Nathan Fielder, but it's just visually higher grade than The Rehearsal or Nathan For You,
Yeah, you get a little
way.
bit of that in the casino sequence that you mentioned, where they kind of use those security style cameras and or like at least angles and stuff like that, where it does play out a little bit more like a Nathan Fielder show. But for the most part, it does have that, also that kind of Safdie look, even with the title sequence and stuff like that. Yeah, what else did I want to point out? Barkad Abdi is really good in it as well. He's smaller role so far, but it's
And he
nice
was in
seeing
Good
him
Time as well.
yes, you're right. It's nice seeing kind of him pop up. Oh my God, there's a chase sequence, and Eric and I laughed so fucking
Girls!
hard at a Nathan Fielder thing. Just until you see it, like, I don't even want to say what it is, because like I think it'll put like too much pressure on how funny that moment is. As my wonderful wife is now home. She says, "What's up?" If everyone couldn't hear that, we are reviewing The Curse, which she still hasn't seen yet. Which Nevis, maybe she'll watch the first episode tonight since it's out. There's a sex scene that's so pathetic and funny too. That is so uncomfortable. That I laughed really, really hard at. But you're just kind of like in your seat. Again, it's interesting. We had this theatrical experience for this, where most people will just watch this in their living room. And I'm wondering if it'll play the same way. And I think that's interesting that they are trying to play it theatrically. But obviously, The Rehearsal and Nathan For You plays super well at home too. So it is this weird blending of these two worlds that when you didn't. I never thought like those coming together like made sense, but when it does, you go, oh yeah, they're both like anxiety inducing or cringe in different ways, and like one in a funny way and one in an anxiety driven way, and then sometimes either one crossing over. So yeah, I think it's this perfect blend of all of that. I think all the performances are great. Like Nathan Fielder, not the like best actor, but he like works in this because he's playing essentially the same character he plays in Nathan For You and The Rehearsal and stuff like that. So um and then Benny Safdie, I'm fine with him inserting himself and playing a character, like, and seeing him pop up in more and more stuff lately. Um, I think is great too. Obviously, he's in Oppenheimer recently, uh,
Are You There,
uh,
God? It's Me,
yeah,
Margaret.
yeah, and things like that. So, yeah, I'm loving it so far. I don't want to go into more because I think it's just a show you should experience on your own. Like, there are many moments that we could talk about more that get more depressing or hilarious throughout
Or
these 3 episodes.
hilariously depressing.
Yeah. So I can't wait to watch the rest. But we even mentioned this after seeing it. Like, it is, I think, going to take a lot out of people each week. Like, it is one of those things, like, even with Nevis having not seen the first 3 episodes, like, I don't know if it's show I'm like, oh, can't wait to rewatch the episodes with you, because like they are exhausting for different reasons, whether it's the anxiety stuff or the depressing stuff or different things like that. But I enjoyed the shit out of these 3 episodes, and I think it's a reason to subscribe to Paramount Plus, at least for a month or two. You can also watch Twisted Metal while you have it there. Maybe episodes of Survivor. I don't know what else is on Paramount Plus. South Park.
Frasier.
So I mean, yeah, Frasier's on there. So you could subscribe and watch to all of that. But and if you're in Toronto or New York, like, if there are tickets left, like, I do think if you can commit to once a week going in on a Friday and watching it, I think it is a good time with a crowd in a theater. So I definitely think it's worthwhile seeing it theatrically. The only thing I was bummed about is because it wasn't properly masked, although it was properly masked, because the show does have a few sequences of the HGTV show, which I do love the cinematography difference, right? Like the going from the filmic look to this really shitty looking HGTV. No offense to HGTV shows, like, you know, I've worked on reality shows and things like that, but they have this specific look which they absolutely nailed. That is very digital looking and very flat looking and clean looking. So the show shifts from an anamorphic widescreen to like a classic 185 widescreen. So because it's probably mastered in 185 because of those sequences, where I would have preferred it, you know, an anamorphic version that has bars on the side instead of the top and bottom, because most of the show is in anamorphic widescreen. So that's a weird nerdy nitpick because we saw it in a theater. At home, it doesn't really matter. So anyways, that's I think it's great. I'm not going to put a rating on it because we've seen only 3 episodes, but I definitely think it's worth watching if you like Nathan Fielder or if you like the Safdies. And if you like both of those things, I think you're really going to like it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's one of those shows where I think I'm going to have to keep watching but I think it is a good point that you made in terms of you need a week to decompress, because it is so much self-loathing. It is so much anxiety and stress that it just becomes almost unbearable by the end of it. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, because it's what it's trying to do, but you can only take so much of that, especially when you have your own mental health and wellness issues that you're dealing with in life. And I think like it just only adds or triggers to certain aspects of that in terms of how people are and interact with each other. And but sometimes it's just like, yeah, you're watching it and you just feel like, man, I need to get out of here. I need to run away.
At the end of the 3 hours, I'm like, "Ooh, okay, I couldn't do more than that right now."
Yeah.
But I'm glad we saw them. So it is streaming on Paramount Plus, both in the US and here in Canada. And like I mentioned, if you're in the New York area, it's at the Lincoln Center. And then in Toronto, it's at the TIFF Bell Lightbox. I have no idea.
Is it TIFF Bell Lightbox anymore, though?
It's still TIFF Bell Lightbox. They haven't. I think that would be next calendar year, so we might only have a month and a half left of that, and then maybe starting in January, Bell's kaput. Just the sponsorship. Bell, the company, is still around. That would be wild if Bell shut down. Anyways, thank you all for listening or watching. We really do appreciate it. Please go check out all of our other reviews. We will have a review for Poor Things, where Emma Stone is amazing in it, and the movie is, spoiler alert, fantastic. But Eric and I will talk about that at a future date, closer to the December 8th release date, most likely. But you can check out our reviews for The Marvels, for The Killer, for Priscilla, thank you. My brain is mush. We'll also have, you can check out all of our, speaking of TIFF, all of our TIFF recaps, all of our TIFF reviews right here on Untitled Movie Reviews, our recap of the festival, as well as Halloween stuff. I know it's weird, but is on our last episode of the Untitled Movie Podcast. And Eric and I will be doing a very special vacation episode of the Untitled Movie Podcast soon, where we talk about our vacations that we took this year. Eric went to Aruba and went to some movie and TV themed things like the Sopranos piano bar. And I also went to Disney and Universal earlier this year. So we'll be talking about that on the newest episode of the show. It should be coming out this week at some point. So there's lots of stuff. Head over to Letterboxd, Untitled_movies. That'll be your one-stop shop for everything. And as always, you can follow me on all of those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
Yes, and also be on the lookout for an interview with Todd Haynes coming up May, December. It's not a long one, but it was nice to talk to one of the best filmmakers working today. So you can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene and on all the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
Let the cherry tomato boys rise again.
Oh boy. Bye, everybody.